Okay, ladies and gentlemen. May I say Annie, bonjour, bonjour tout le monde, Fáiltírimh Illig Inucht, and hello and welcome. I think we've covered most of the ethnic groups there. My name is David Shanahan. I'm the editor-publisher of the North Grenville Times, and we are hosting this event, as we have done so many times in the past. I want to say, first of all, that I'm really happy to see so many people here. I think what we're all doing tonight is taking part in something that's really important. I think the more we look around the world, the more we see how precious our life is here, how precious democracy is and freedom of speech, and the right to believe and be who we are. On this particular evening, I'd like to ask that we maybe take a moment of silence to remember a woman who lived her life with grace, with dignity, with a commitment to duty and honor. I think Queen Elizabeth II has stamped herself on an age, as Elizabeth I did. And I think we all recognize that this is a new territory that we're in. So maybe just for a few minutes, we'll just be silent and in honor and respect for Elizabeth. Thank you, and I'm sure the new king will appreciate any prayers or good vibes you can send his way. One gets the feeling he will need them. Okay, this evening we're going to be hearing from and asking questions of the 9 men and women who've put their names forward to be on the municipal council as councillors for the next 4 years. The format for the evening is going to be a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. They will be going in order as to lots that they drew. So we have a list. It's not in the order that they're seated or anything like this. I should say as well that tonight we are being live streamed on Facebook. And I want to thank the live stream junkies for doing this and for making this available then to the community at large. If you're watching on Facebook at the moment, I would recommend that you share this with as many people as you can to let them know what's going on and to join in. The intention is also that this will be available on our YouTube channel over the coming days, so you can go back and listen to the greatest hits and admire the eloquence and just the sheer panache of these people. You can edit me out. Okay, after the opening statements, as I said, 2 minutes for each candidate. After, and to let them know and you know, after a minute and a half, our timekeeper, Pat Jessup here, will hold up a green card to let them know they've got 30 seconds left. At the end of the 2 minutes, a red card will be shown, and that means you're done. And obviously, we expect everybody to be very respectful and keep to the time and be nice to each other. After the opening statements are completed, then it will be open to the rest of us, the rest of you in this case, for any kind of question and answer session. There are 2 ways that you can ask questions. If you'd rather submit one in writing, we will have 2 people, one on either side, Brando and Maggie. They have little yellow pads and pens, and they'll pass, if you put your hand up, they'll pass you the pad, you can write your question, and it'll come up to me, and I can ask on your behalf. If you'd rather ask in person, we have 2 microphones, one on either side. So at that point, if you want to line up behind the microphone, take your turn to ask your question. I suppose the main point to make at this stage is that we have 9 candidates. That's a lot of people, taking up a lot of time, as they should. So try and keep the questions answerable and questions that can easily be handled in the format that we have here. The candidates will have an opportunity to answer any question that's asked, whether it's directed to them directly or not. But we'll try and keep this as contained as we can, just in terms of time, because that's the limit that we have tonight. So if that is clear, and anybody got any objection or want to change anything, well, it's too late. The order in which the speakers were drawn means that the first person is Chelsea McIntyre, and I'd ask each of them, obviously, introduce yourselves. This is your chance to introduce yourself to North Grenville.
Okay, hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay in the back? Good, thank you. So my name is Chelsea McIntyre. I'm a professional fundraiser. I've been so for 15 years, and I currently work for the Salvation Army provincially, and I work from home. So although I know Calvin and Aaron locally, and I've worked with them on certain projects, I don't work locally in town here. But I would love to. They are lovely people and great community leaders. So just to clarify that little bit, I grew up always wanting to help. And when I went to Carleton, I got a communications degree and I graduated. And although I could have gone into really probably any field with a communications degree, it's pretty generic, like business. But I strictly have worked for nonprofit or charity ever since I graduated. I love facilitating impact. It's my ultimate dream and goal. Actually, my ultimate is to be a philanthropist, but I don't have the money for that. So I'm a fundraiser. I really think that my skill set of networking, collaboration, and just facilitating impact, the creative solution piece of applying for grants and suggesting proposals to donors, sponsors, and grantors, I think would come in handy. The existing council brought in a grant proposal writer, and I would love to work with them, thank you, and be able to bring more money into the township that doesn't have to be repaid and that doesn't have to be debt financed. I really want to support the growth of this municipality, but in a sustainable way. The other two things that are really important to me are being connected through communications and transparency, and being kind, curious, open-minded, and listening. So those are the things that are important to me, and I really appreciate your time, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Andre, you're next. Are you? Oh, you are. So much for organization. Yeah, I just went to the next one. Oh, there's 9 of you. Oh. All right, John. You're on.
Got a lot to say. First, thanks to the North Grenville Times and to Livestream Junkies for giving us the opportunity tonight to share ideas with you about the issues facing us and with each other. Second, I want to acknowledge all of the other 8 candidates up here tonight. I think it's the fact that you're here is a testament to your commitment to the community and to your courage. Let's have some audience participation here. Hands up, everyone who was here or living here 4 years ago during the last campaign. Don't be shy. There we go. Okay, keep your hands up if you were here for the 2014 election. Okay, and keep them up if you were here, this is the final one, for the 2010. Okay, all right. Yeah, no. I got a minute left. I better hurry up. So, you know, in 2010, they returned all of council except for the mayor. We had a new mayor in 2010. In 2014, you kept most of the council and re-elected David Gordon as your mayor. And now in 2018, I think the community was really ready for a change, because in 2018, North Grenville elected an entirely brand new council. Among the things we heard during the campaign was advocating for more transparency and increased accountability. Is that my 30 seconds? Led by Mayor Nancy Beckford, this council has delivered. So I'll jump to the end. North Grenville, much has been accomplished over the past 4 years, but there's more to be done. I want to continue as your councillor, and I'm asking for your vote. Re-elect John Barkley. Thank you.
Okay, next there is Robert, you're on.
Good evening, I'm Robert Bowden. I'd like to thank everyone for coming, all the candidates for standing for election, David Shanahan and the North Grenville Times for hosting. My wife and I moved to Kemptville just before the pandemic. We chose this area as a desirable place to retire. So we have a vested interest in keeping this way of life. I've spent the majority of my life living in Quebec, where there are 3 topics of conversation: weather, the Canadians, and politics. I grew up on grain farms in Saskatchewan, where the first vehicle I drove was a tractor. Around villages so small you'd blink, you'd miss them, where Kemptville would be considered a metropolis. I've never run for office or held an elected position. Growing up, my mother worked for the mayor of Saskatoon in his private practice, so civic events were a weekly conversation. During high school, I had to interview someone. I got to interview the mayor. Before Kemptville, my wife and I lived in a small town on the south shore of Montreal, where I attended council meetings as a spectator and got involved in a Citizens Action Committee when the local hospital foundation presented plans for a major expansion, which required the purchase and demolition of 23 houses, displacing most of my neighbors who were retirees and owned their houses for decades. This was a situation with similar politics to the construction proposal for the prison. I'm a mechanical engineer with an MBA. I've worked for a large corporation, run my own businesses, freelanced as an automotive journalist, including to Old Autos newspaper published out of Merrickville. I now work for the federal government and have had a dual career in aviation, building construction, renovation, and energy efficiency. That's it.
Thanks, Robert. I believe, Mitch, you're next.
Thanks so much, David. And thank you all for coming, you, the members of the North Grenville Hiring Committee. We here are going through our attempt to let you guys think we're the right folks for your council. So some of you have met me, some of you haven't. I thought I'd give you a quick snapshot, bullet form, 2 minutes or less. Who am I? I own a horse farm out in Oxford Mills. I'm an entrepreneur and small business person, and I love it. I drove here. I did not take the horse. We thought about it, didn't do it. Having said that, before that, I spent 30 years in government as a senior executive in multiple departments. That's what led to me to become a public policy nerd. I am the kind of guy that gets into the economics of things, socioeconomics, community economic development, the environment, strategic direction setting. These are the things I did for a living for 30 years. That also led me into a career of building consensus and getting everybody inside the tent. You can't get things done without everybody, your neighbors, your friends, those who aren't your friends. You still need them all together to pull it off. And I've had a career of doing that. I like to think of myself as a community builder as well. While I'm not on council right now, I think my schedule is as busy as many of the councillors. I sit on multiple boards and committees here in North Grenville, dealing with seniors, economic development, Kemptville campus, affordable housing. These are things that are important to me and that I've spent countless hours of volunteer time doing in our community. I often said when I hired people, there were only 3 things I looked for: the ability to think, a willingness to work hard, and integrity. Everything else you can teach your employees. They're born with those things and their parents raise them with those things. So I like to think I bring a lot of that to the table as well. And above all, I'm a partner and a dad of 3 daughters. That is my first priority, is my kids. All my other priorities, go to the website, ask me questions. There's tons on economic development, effective government. I've got it all in there. I'd love to talk to you all, you guys, about that. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mitch. And Deb Wilson's next.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you to the North Grenville Times for hosting the meeting, and thank you to everyone that's put their name forward for council. I've got 4 pages of writing here, and I'm just going to throw them away because I'll never get through them. Anyways, I'm Debbie Wilson. Deborah, as my father used to call me when he was upset, or Deb. I go by Deb now. I lend myself to be a community leader in this town. I've born and raised here. My parents had a business, Graham's Bakery, and I was born here and raised, and I bring a depth of understanding to the needs of North Grenville currently and in the future. I know the value of hard work, teamwork, and determination, and adapting to changing circumstances. I left home, went to college, had a career in the fashion industry out in Winnipeg, came back in 1988 to raise my family. I have 2 children. I also have 3 grandchildren now up at Iqaluit. If elected to council, I'll be a compassionate, knowledgeable, and fiscally prudent voice for our growing community using a common sense approach. I'm currently sitting on council by way of Jim McManaman leaving council, so I was appointed. I applied for the position, and some of my colleagues here had applied, and thankfully I got it. And I'm learning. There's a lot of things to do when you're on council. There's lots of meetings to attend. There's lots of reading. There's lots of homework to do, and you have to appear in the public. You have to be ready at the drop of a hat to run out and have your photo taken, as you all see. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Deb. And next is Chris.
Okay, thanks David and the North Grenville Times for hosting this event tonight. It's very important to be able to do this, so thanks so much. Hi everybody, my name is Chris Wilson, no relation to Debbie. I've been on this earth for almost 37 years, and during this time I've experienced a lot of what life has to offer. I've experienced health, love, business success, travel, illness, suffering, and loss. These experiences allowed me to develop a strong set of personal values. Values like honesty, fairness, transparency, integrity, and courage. I'm running to be a councillor of North Grenville because I believe in giving back to your community. I've been giving back to the community in various ways over recent years, whether it be my drone videos, board member of the Ferguson Forest Centre, the Kemptville Community Association, and more recently, the Kemptville Area Family Resource Centre. But I feel like the most effective way for someone with my skills and experience to give back to the community is to be on council. My career is in professional risk management. I spend my days negotiating with various types of people at insurance companies, private businesses, not-for-profits, and other entities. As a councillor, I'll use my ability to effectively negotiate with all different types of people to work towards real action on social and economic development, better health services, and affordable housing, protecting our environment, and saving our farmland. I will work to eliminate wasteful spending and ensure that our budget makes every dollar count. I'm very excited to be here with you tonight and speak with you all, and I appreciate your consideration as the next councillor of North Grenville. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And Kristen.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you all for being here this evening. To start, I would like to acknowledge that we are on unceded and unsurrendered territory in this area, and I would be remiss if that didn't get noted. A quick introduction as to who I am. I am a mother of 3, a partner, a veteran, a public servant, a scientist, and by virtue of my current position on council, a politician with a small p. Je ne suis pas francophone, mais je suis bilingue. I am also a small business owner and a dog lover. The last 4 years have not been without challenges for all of us in a variety of different ways. The progress that this council has made, however, I think have had a lasting and sustainable impact in a very positive way. And I would just like to touch on 3 of them. Affordable housing has been looked at holistically and very thoroughly, and the recommendations and guidance that has come out of the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing has had an immediate impact on our planning bylaws and will have a long-lasting impact on our housing issues and crisis in this area. We have also worked very hard on engagement with the community by making sure that there are plenty of opportunities. An open door and open email policy was quickly adopted, and many of you took advantage of the open email policy for sure. And I think that the discussion forum that were in place prior to COVID, as well as the advisory committees, gave passionate residents an opportunity to give their thoughts and ideas on where the community should go, and make sure that they had the ear of council and the support from staff. Finally, the KDH board was one of the most impactful places that I had the opportunity to participate. That's the hospital board. I heard directly from many healthcare workers about the crisis in our community and how the municipality has a role to play in ensuring that lots of new healthcare workers show up in our community. The EDI, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion and Reconciliation, cannot go without being mentioned. Merci, thank you, miigwech.
And Doreen, you're next.
Thank you, David, and my fellow candidates, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming this evening. As a registered nurse, I've been an advocate for the community and for people for my whole adult life. And for the past 4 years, I've also been doing this as your councillor. All of my education and experience and duties, etc., are on this card, and I welcome you to pick one up, please, and have a look. I want to begin by thanking the people of North Grenville for putting their trust in me and giving me a chance 4 years ago. It's been my honor to serve you as a municipal councillor, and it was with challenges, but it's been a great learning experience, and I've been very honored and very proud to have that role. I also want to thank my fellow councillors and the senior management team at the municipality who helped this rookie learn the ropes. I'm committed to lifelong learning, and I know that I will always be learning because there's always something new coming down from the province or within new legislation. I'm once again committed to promote a safe and healthy community. Where we live is a social determinant of our health. And over the past 4 years, I've supported many initiatives that have made North Grenville more pedestrian and cycling friendly. We have safer roads, we have lower speed limits, we have traffic calming methods, I've supported, along with my colleagues, numerous recreational initiatives, and that contributed to us becoming the most active community in Canada and in Ontario this year. I faced the challenges of the pandemic alongside all of you. I went to work last year with the public health unit. I put on some gloves and you rolled up your sleeves, and together we became the most highly vaccinated health unit in Ontario. I continued to be engaged with the community and as we zoomed our way along. I will make decisions based on reliable data, community and stakeholder input, and common sense, and I would appreciate your support in this upcoming election. Thank you.
Thanks, Doreen. I think it's kind of your turn now, isn't it? We finally got round to it. Andre's up.
Thanks, David. And thank you for everybody for coming tonight. I think this is an exciting time. I'm the big guy with the little red car outside, and people wondering how I get in it and out of it, but it's not a problem. I'm also the, before COVID, was the Friday morning greeter at the hospital for the auxiliary, and I'm sure I've seen some of you before, and I hope you appreciated the efforts we put in there. So 4.5 years ago, my wife and I and our dog moved to Kemptville because I was retiring and I was going to take it easy and settle off into the sunset like Roy Rogers or John Wayne. Unfortunately, I came into Kemptville and said, holy moly, what kind of place is this? So exciting, such a wonderful community, so caring, just the great spirit. And guess what? I'm busier now than I've ever been. So obviously I've joined a lot of organizations, a lot of boards, but not just to be on boards, but actually to be an active member. As an example, the auxiliary where I actually work at the hospital, etc. So my profession is a chartered accountant. Way back in university, I had a choice of either playing football or becoming an accountant, and I thought there was a longer career as an accountant, so that's what I became, an official bean counter. So what I bring to, or hope to bring to council, is the experience and the knowledge I have in budgeting, financial controls, management, reserve funds, et cetera, which of course for me almost comes naturally. But also, being an accountant, I've had the opportunity to work for corporations, and I've had some very successful experiences, and I've been able to share some of those with my fellow employees. I was a team builder. One of the organizations I work with as president, we were named one of the 50 best managed companies in Canada, I was very proud. And it wasn't necessarily because of me. It was the team that I work with, and that's my strength, I think, is to do some team building, give the employees the opportunity to do the best they can, give them the resources they need, and I think that's what I would do with the public service and employees that we have here in North Grenville, which are wonderful. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you all. Well, that's an introduction. And at the end of our time together, we'll have a closing statement from each of the candidates as well. So now is an opportunity for you to ask questions, either of the group or of an individual. Each person up here can choose to answer any of the questions if they so wish. As I said before, if you want to ask a question in person, you can come up to either of the two mics that are at either side of the room. If you want to ask in writing, then put your hand up and we'll get a paper and pen to you so you can do that. I should mention at this point that on October 6th, we'll be back here again for a mayoral candidates meeting. It will be at the same time, same place, same station, and it will also be live streamed. It will not be probably quite as busy up here, and I might have to challenge one of the candidates for this chair. But that's one of the perks of this job. I don't have to run for council, but I get to sit here once every 4 years. And nobody votes for me. Yeah, I know. While we're waiting on that, I just wanted to say, following up on some of the comments that were made, and starting with John and ending with Andre, rather naturally. This is a community with a long history. That might be an obvious thing to say. It is growing fast. More and more people are moving in here, and people who move here want to know what's going on here. Generally speaking, they are very impressed by North Grenville, and rightly so. I know, just looking out here, that there are people here who have been in this community a long time. Some of you have worked in media. Some of you have worked in politics. Hi, Ralph. And there are so many others who've been involved in making this community become what it is. So when you come out to a meeting like this and you have the opportunity to talk to these ones here, what you're doing is you're helping to set the tone and the future for an entire community. And that might sound pretentious or heavy, but that's actually what goes on. What those of us who have been around here for quite some time, I suppose, know is that a mayor and council can make a huge difference, one way or another, to the community. They have a more direct impact on our daily lives than the federal or provincial do, oddly enough. That's just the way it works. That's where your tax dollars are going. So I think it's a good thing that we're here. I think it's good if we have questions that we ask them and we find out as much as we can about the people before we vote. So there's a couple of questions I know in writing. There's somebody who wants, a couple of people who want to ask questions on the mic. So we'll wait until they get lined up. There's a mic on this side there. Okay. And just check that the mics are on. Okay, just introduce yourself and to whom do you wish to ask a question?
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Juliana Melnick-McDonald. I've not born and raised, raised in Kempville, have been here, had a business, have 4 children here. The question tonight is directed to whomever is interested in answering, especially those who have served as councillors so far. So as a mother of 4 young children and as a teacher, I spend a lot of time thinking and worrying, truth be told, about how and where I want my children to grow up. I know I'm not alone in that sentiment. We chose to lay down roots in North Grenville, and occasionally over the last few years, I have wondered if we made the right choice from the perspectives of equity, open-mindedness, and inclusion. How will you, if you are elected as councillor, actively advocate for and ensure that all voices in North Grenville are being heard equally regardless of race, gender, or sexual preference?
Anybody like to start that one? Okay. Dorian and then.
Thank you for that question. I think that's a very good question, something near and dear for me. I've been thinking about it. They are very important values and dimensions that go into building an even better community, and we already live in a fantastic community. We have shown support for Black Lives Matter. We fly the North Grenville Pride flag. We have hosted the parade. We have painted a crosswalk. We have made everyone feel very safe and welcome in our community. Truth and reconciliation is also very important. We've made big strides towards the calls for action and involvement of the local Indigenous residents as well as a consultant. We're doing training and education, and I think we've made very good strides for that. We welcome refugees in North Grenville. We have a diverse number of people with various abilities, the community living group, a number of different faith groups, different religious associations, and I think we do our very best. Canada is often described as a mosaic country rather than a melting pot, and I believe we should embrace and celebrate all the differences that we have. I want to see a community respectfully come together and accept all people, regardless of their race, their color, their religion, their sexual orientation or identification, and their abilities. So I am all for total inclusion, and I would like to be a part of developing that policy. Thanks for that question.
Okay. Mitch, and then
Thanks,
Chelsea.
David, and thanks for the question. I do think that we are a very open community. We're very much a community that likes to dialogue on things. But at times, I've been disappointed. I was sitting in a Walmart parking lot with my windows open, and the things I heard come from the car next to me shocked me. And I remember at the time, it was just before Pride week, and going online and talking about this and just being so taken aback, thinking that how can this be something coming out of somebody in our community? But I took heart in the dialogue of the 50 comments that followed that of outrage from, the other neighbors we have here about things like that. You can never not be on top of this. One of the first questions I got online was about LGBTQ acceptance in our community and are we doing everything? Doreen, you did a good job explaining those efforts. And I think everybody on this side would agree, more can be done. More should always be done. I also took, I'll leave it on this with your question, the importance of communication. We have to constantly be taking information in from the community and constantly pushing it out to the community. As involved as I am, sometimes I find it challenging to find information about things that are important to my daily life, and I have a lot of folks I can talk to. So I think we can do a little bit more about that, but again, it's that two-way communication, taking the stuff in and dialoguing out and using every tool we have as a municipality.
Okay, Chelsea. Just like Chelsea, Kristen, and then Chris.
Thanks so much, Juliana. Really value your question. I think I've been in Kempville for 3 years, and in that time, I have and I do pay attention to diversity initiatives. It's something I've been advocating for since I was in university and marching for equity. Not just performative efforts. I think we really need to move beyond that, and the way to do that is through representation and seats at the table. We need to hear from everybody, and we need to go seeking for those voices that are marginalized. Anyone who has who is a member of a marginalized group has faced and likely continues to face barriers in society. And many have gone through not just brief encounters like what you were mentioning, Mitch, but have actually faced intergenerational trauma. And when those people are asked to speak up, are asked for their voice and their opinion to be shared, it is emotional labor. And it needs to be addressed and sought with a great deal of care, because there's no such thing as a safe space. There are only safer spaces. We need to be, we just need to be so careful. And I think, you know, there's no such thing as world peace. I mean, we all saw what happened in February. But, you know, myself, just a quick example, I have turned hate into a swear word in my house. There is no need for that word to be a part of my children's vocabulary. And they correct everyone around them. And I am so proud of them that they do that, because when now they're almost 8 and they say, oh, I hate this food or something. And I say, oh, are you going to start a war with the spaghetti? And I say that's the only thing that hate creates, is dichotomy, pain, and war. So I'm not actually campaigning for world peace. I really just want kindness, inclusion, and so I really value your question, Juliana. Thank you.
Okay, Kristen, you are next.
Thank you. I'll try and keep this brief. I have lots to say about this. I think most of you are aware of my passion and inclination for inclusion, and some of the events that have happened in our community over the past few years have been sad. They have made many people sad and hurt, and there have been a lot of things said that certainly people, I think, need to do some learning and start at home. And whether you consider home your own home with your family, or home at school, or home in a local club or community association, I think that there's a lot of learning that folks can do to understand better what it means to be part of an inclusive community. And so I don't have a magic wand that I can wave and say that now everybody understands what inclusion looks like, but I think that if everybody goes into it with the heart and the kindness to approach everyone where they're at, and to understand that, you know, we're all human and we all have different lived experiences, I think that goes a long way. And so making sure that the words that we use actually mean something, and that they will and can hurt if they're not chosen properly. I think looking at what we do in this community, flying flags, the Pride Parade and so on, those are all wonderful things that we're doing, but they're not the be all and end all, because on the heels of Pride and all of that happened in a wonderful celebration, there were many folks who looked around and said, they've had their celebration, now we should be able to do what we want. And I think that's very unfortunate, and I don't want to be part of that kind of community. And so as a member of council, I'm working very hard to do my own learning, do my own understanding, whether it's for LGBTQ2S+ community and learning more and understanding, or looking at reconciliation and understanding more about where we're at in that whole process. It all comes down to learning and approaching with kindness. And I think that that could go a very long way for everyone. There's EDI policy that I did mention at the end of my intro that I didn't really give enough time to, is important. And it's work, meaningful work that is happening with the staff at the municipality and with community members to try and move forward. And I think that there are other groups in this community that are doing the same thing. And that is a wonderful step forward. It isn't the solution. It's not going to be solved overnight, but it is the right step forward.
Chris, and then John.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to Sorry, I wanted to touch on when I first moved to the North Grenville about 4 years ago, I was very impressed with the displays of support for Black Lives Matter and other marginalized groups. But more recently, I was a little saddened to see that one of our local business owners had to speak out publicly and make a post on Facebook and risk his own livelihood and, you know, his ability to pay his mortgage in order for his voice to be heard. So my understanding is that he expressed his concerns to council and various groups prior to this happening, and I just really wish it would have been taken a bit more seriously at that time, as opposed to making a big to-do about it and dividing our community on Facebook like it was done. I think you know, if you ask, I don't want to speak for them, but if you ask anybody in a marginalized community, they'd rather have real action and real support than just some token gestures. Don't get me wrong, the token gestures are great as long as they go hand in hand with the real support also. So I just think we're in a good spot as a community when it comes to inclusion, diversity. I feel like we could bring more people to the table. And I really wish we could get to a place where we don't have to have local business owners threaten their own livelihood to be heard. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll try and be brief as well. I've heard some great things around the dais here this evening. You know, Kristen talked about meaningful work, and Chris just mentioned symbolic gestures as having some value. And I want the public to know that it's been a real education being on council as we have dealt with some of these very divisive issues, and that when it comes to reconciliation or diversion, equity, and inclusion, we've also been talking about policies. We've had with staff, workshops and seminars to raise awareness. And so I think we have to all be cognizant of the truth of the situation that we have. And as Kristen mentioned, you know, approach it with love and kindness. And I think that's the solution. I don't think there's any other way. Love is love and hate is hate. And we have to stand up against the spreading of hate and hate speech. Thank you.
Here we go. From my experience, the people who are more opposed to the concept or the stereotype that are represented by groups, by visible minorities or those of different sexual preference. It's not the people themselves. As a community, we have to acknowledge that different groups exist, that they are part of our community and they're welcome here. And I think that when push comes to shove, that when we work as a community, there's very few people that will refuse assistance from somebody that represents a group that they may be opposed to. So I think it's a learning exercise and one that needs to be continually brought forward and acknowledged and recognized in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I don't want to repeat what everybody else said, but I like what Chelsea said about the word hate. Hate is taught. Nobody's born hating anything. So if somebody has the ability or the desire to hate something, it's because they were taught that. I've grown up as the golden rule, you treat others the way you want to be treated, and I think that's the way most of us should act, and I hope that that would continue that way for quite a while. Thank you.
Did you want? Nadia has a question, I believe. Hi.
Do I have to do anything?
No, just chat away.
Good evening, everybody. And I'll start by thanking all the candidates for running. It's an impressive roster of people. It's wonderful. But I'm going to get back to the nitty-gritties of governance and style of governance, because that's my problem. In a community that I've loved since 1984, we bought our house as soon as we saw it. We've lived there and loved it and come back to it. When we came back after some postings, we didn't even consider another community. It's a wonderful place. I helped build the Dandelion Festival. I was part of a wonderful group of women, the Six Chicks of Gallery 6, and it's been a pleasure to be a member of this community. It was a shock to me when only one opinion was sought about a very important project, the prison. But that isn't really what I'm here about. I'm here about the approach, the management of that question by the mayor and this council. To me, what were the rules of planning that exist for Ontario small towns to challenge what Ontario was imposing, to discuss with everybody? When the strategic planning process was occurring, it was not on the agenda. Why? It's for the next 10 years of this community. So my question is this. Other projects like this will come along. And it could be that a very imposing MPP who doesn't believe in certain niceties will again impose a project. What do you believe is your role? Because I asked several of you if you had read the actual statute and the regulations that govern the planning and governance of each level of the Ontario government. Because you behaved as if we were just a junior partner to be told everything. That isn't true from the statutes. None of you had read them. So, what will you do with another imposed project, which may happen, in order for the majority voice of such a seminal change in the community? What is it? Because most of us would agree. That's the majority. That's the majority. But to be told that people know because they've listened to people, yes, you listen to people you know. But did you know what the majority voice really is? And that's my problem. But otherwise, people have worked hard. The council tried very hard in very challenging circumstances. It isn't that I'm saying everything's bad, not at all. I just think that a better management understanding and tools of the trade to do with the actual planning and execution would have helped them to deal with the particular entity that is our entity. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry.
Okay, we knew this was going to come up for some reason. As I see it, there are two ways we can go here. One is Nadia's question is really about governance and the way this particular issue and this particular MPP was handled, as it were, locally. I think maybe if those members of council who are here want to address that from their point of view. There are other questions that have come in, and I'm sure there are other questions in the audience about the actual facts and conditions and reality of the proposed prison, which I think obviously we want to have answers to as well. But to set the scene for that, to give it a context, it would be useful if current members of council over the last 4 years could tell us how it came to them and why they responded the way they did. Does that seem fair? Okay. We're over here, so John, you can start.
I'll take a flying leap at that. Thank you, Nadia, for the question about governance. Council, one of our main duties is developing policy. We have a single employee, and that's our Chief Administrative Officer. We rely so much on staff to provide the information we need to help us make decisions. They report to us all the time, and we sometimes don't follow their recommendations. We go against their recommendations. I remember the day before the announcement when I happened to be, I think it was the end of a police service board meeting. The mayor was looking fairly dejected, and I said, you know, what's going on? And I said, is it good news or bad news? And she said, well, I really don't know. And the next day, the jail was announced to be constructed. I'm not happy with the lack of consultation. There was no consultation. Believe it, people can believe it or not, but I'm telling you, the mayor found out that day, and everyone else found out the day after that this was going to happen. And there's nothing that the province has said or done that would indicate that they are in any way prepared to change their goal of building this facility. When it comes to how, so I explained a bit about how we make decisions. That decision we took as on recommendation as being inviolate. We couldn't do anything about it. Now, I like to quote Reagan, say trust but verify. We did not read at that point in time the statute that talks about the different jurisdictions or level of authority between the province, the counties, because we're a lower tier, we're below the counties. Our hands are tied in many circumstances. We were told that nothing could throw them off that project. So we endeavored that next day to try and get the answers that the community was asking for, legitimate questions, legitimate concerns, from, and I published a letter recently, with very little feedback from the province. I think to a certain extent, Steve Clark's hands were tied as far as getting information from a sister department. I think the communication coming from the previous Solicitor General was horrible. We were stuck between a rock and a hard place, a community demanding to get answers to questions, we having to rely on the Solicitor General for that information. In terms, and again, I admit I didn't read the statute law, Nadia, so it's a failing. That's on me. But we do rely on staff to give us the information. So trust but verify. We verified with staff, okay? And to this day, again, I haven't heard anything or seen anything from the Solicitor General, the new Solicitor General, about changing their plans. So when it comes to governance, it's the responsibility of council to make the decisions, but we do have to rely on information and the expertise of staff, and we have a very professional staff. So I can't comment on the judicial review. I guess that question has been posed or raised as one of the reasons that they want a judicial review, but we'll see. I guess September 15th is. Oh, I think, okay. What would we do in the future? We would do the same thing. I mean, what else can we do? We're not lawyers. We're not, constitutional lawyers. We would, again, rely on the expertise of staff. And I think we get great advice. I think it's accurate advice. It's still a question before the courts about whether, that holds water or not. So don't shoot the messenger is what I'm saying, right? We're giving you everything that they give us, which is not sufficient in my mind. And I think I've gone public saying that. Thanks.
Okay, Doreen, you wanted to say something?
Thank you very much. And Nadia, thank you for your question to me earlier and to us this evening. I agree with everything that Councillor Barkley has said, and the day that I found out, I was at work at the Civic Hospital when I got a phone call from Mayor Peckford, and she told me this announcement had been made. And so it really caught me off guard. I had no idea. I didn't expect it. Really didn't expect it. It's not what I would have chosen to build on the farm side, but it is a reality, and I agree. I did not read the statute either, but it was zoned institutional, and it will remain institutional. And I have nurse colleagues. I think you've probably seen the letter that I wrote in the North Grenville Times, as well as I republished it on Facebook just last week. And I've known people who've come through the system as inmates, people who've found themselves in conflict with the law. They are human beings, just like all of us, and they deserve the best opportunity to turn their lives around, and they need to be in a place that's safe and that's modern and that staff can work in a safe place too. It was not my first choice, wasn't my choice at all to put it there, but it is, I believe, as Councillor Barclay said, there's very little or anything that we can do about it. Now, when Guelph University packed up and moved off the campus, washed their hands of it, gone, there was a sense of doom and gloom and total dismay all around North Grenville and Kemptville. And it was shattering for a lot of people. But just look at what has come from that, because we are a very resilient community. We grabbed the opportunity. We bought that property. And now we have over 600 acres that's being developed in the Kemptville campus. There are over 700 students on the campus now, more than there ever were when it was the college. And the maple syrup production, there's over 1,000 trees tapped now. The apprenticeship program is coming back. We have a very strong Kemptville Campus Board who are working towards implementing the campus master plan. This is a community that will seize opportunities and be very resilient. And it's having a correctional facility come here is, again, I say, it was not my choice. It took me totally by surprise. But we can and we will make good things come from this opportunity. We can get the surplus land transferred to the municipality. We can develop it for agricultural and community purposes. And I think that we can make something good come out of this. So I appreciate that everyone has different opinions about it, and it's not always happy thoughts about it, but I think we have to accept some things and move forward and make the best of it. So, and
Thank you very much. So I guess my reaction, much is the same as Doreen and John have both said, is that, thank you, is that none of us were expecting this. There was no prior consultation. The mayor called and said, so I have some news, and basically told me, and I used certain expletives, I think, when I was on the call with her, because I was in shock and I was surprised. It was not what any of us had hoped and dreamed. And I think we had had conversations on the margins about what could happen with this property and what could be done there. And a correctional facility was not on the list. We never voted on wanting a correctional facility in our community. So let's just be clear on that. We didn't come to council and say yay or nay to have it here. What we did was we accepted the information that we received, and then we went into, as John has mentioned, information gathering. And we started to find out about what the details were. We relied on staff and other experts to inform us of what we needed to understand about the bigger plan. It was on provincial land. What does the provincial land mean? What does it mean to deal with the current government or even the previous government under Doug Ford? And what would it mean to oppose that? Well, we could oppose it, but it also would mean, I think, to shut down communications as well. And we wouldn't be at the stage that we're at right now and having the conversations about policing costs, about the impact on infrastructure in the hospital and so on, and trying to mitigate those as best we can. And it's not what anybody wants to hear here. I can say wholeheartedly, I don't want a correctional facility, but I don't want one in any community, because I think there should be better ways of dealing with things, and I think the correctional facility and the whole correction system should be overhauled. So there's a lot that gets unpacked in all of this when we start talking about what it means to have a correctional facility here. But in the end, we relied on advice and we sought out information, and we're continuing to actively seek out that information. That work has not stopped. It's happening behind the scenes because there's a lot that has to go into that, and we need to get answers from the Solicitor General's office and others to make sure that we aren't left in a very difficult position down the road, financially or otherwise. I would say that as far as what we would do in the future, it depends. It depends on where, what, how. Provincial land falls under different rules than if we're talking about municipal land and wanting to have a different kind of facility in there. maybe it would be a facility that would truly have a significant job increase and an economic impact that we could be, that we could tie ourselves to, unlike what is being purported for the correctional facility. And I think all of those things matter. There's no one-size-fits-all answer for you, Nadia. I think that this council has worked very hard at being diligent, and it doesn't mean that we came out with our own picket signs to say that we disagree. We've tackled it in the way that we best know how with the advice that we've been given. Thank you.
Okay, Deb wasn't on council when this happened, so it would be unfair to ask for why she did something when she wasn't there to do it. There are questions here, and obviously are questions, simple questions. Somebody wants each one of the candidates to say whether they're for or against the prison. The issue there is, what do you mean by for or against, under what circumstances, and so on. It's a very simple, simplistic kind of question. But on a more general thing, we'll come back around to prison, I think, in all of this. Well, first of all, are there any other candidates who have comments on what they've heard or want to say anything? Yeah, of course. Well, Mitch and then Chris.
Yeah, it's a tough situation and a tough question and a tough issue. Nadia's point, I'll take it out of the prison just for a second. She did, and I think it was a good question. What do you do in a situation where there's an unequal negotiation between two parties? One holds all the cards, the other doesn't. How do you do that, especially as a municipal government, which has limited levers, lowest level of government on the chain, right? Ultimately, when you choose your councillor and these folks here, you're choosing them to represent you. Okay, and part of the job is to hear you. Part of the job is to bring our common sense to the table. I can comfortably say there is no logic at all, and I worked for the Federal Department of the Solicitor General in this field. There is no logic to this community. Not that anybody said that, okay? I'm not saying anybody said that. But there is a very basic need to understand what's going on with any issue and dig down. I appreciate staff's comments. I mean, I was staff for years giving comments. And I expect a pushback from whoever I was reporting to, in my own career. That's part of the job. That's why I said it's important to look at the people you hire. You want to see their CVs and their credentials and what they can bring to the table. You want the best municipal staff. We've got a great municipal staff. You want the best councillors, mayor, the whole thing. It's a tough situation. You don't know what's coming over the next hill, but all you can do is prepare yourself as best as you can with the best team to do the work that you'd like to have done. And as I said, in this particular case, it's a tough situation, but not to answer the yes, no, but there is no logic, if you want to ask the longer question about that, for doing something like that here. And again, nobody said that was the case.
Thank you. Yeah, so I agree with everybody that there's not much that a local council here could do regarding the prison. I'm just a little skeptical as to how the announcement was communicated in the first place. Everyone that answered around the table seemed to have the same impression when you heard the news, that it was bad for the community. At least that's what I got from you talking just now. So if you knew it was bad, why did everybody communicate the same messaging that the province gave you, the 500 jobs, the economic boom, all the benefits, and try to sell it to the community with the announcement? I think it was not the right thing to do. I think those have been proven false claims. And what I hear at the door now is pretty much it's 50-50 split down the middle. 50% of the people are really opposed to the prison, and 50% don't care that much. There's nobody really super pro-prison. But the ones that don't care that much, they hang their hat on the economic benefit that it's going to bring to town. And I don't think it's really being thought through to its fullest, the economic loss that our town could see from having the prison. So I don't think that people coming to town, working in the prison, potentially buying some coffees or some sandwiches is worth the families that might not move to town because they don't want to live in a prison community, or the businesses that might not look to relocate to Kemptville because of the prison project. I don't know how true it is, but I was at a Canadian Cybersecurity Forum event, and I met a gentleman that runs a software company in Ottawa, 150 employees, and he said he was looking at moving his head office to Kemptville, but pulled the plug because of the prison. So I'm not sure how truthful his words are, but I do have his business card still if anyone wants to reach out to him. So I just have concerns on how it was communicated, why you guys chose to present it as such a positive option when it seems like you guys didn't want the prison also. So.
Are you asking the current council to answer that? Or is it just a hypothetical?
No, sorry, I was trying to answer that other question and I just forgot what I was going to say at the end. She asked what are the councillors going to do on the next project that comes along, and that's something that I had concerns about too. If you just take the province's word at face value and you don't actually get into the weeds of the rules and regulations, what happens if the next project is something that they force on us that poisons our water or, impacts our quality of life significantly? Are we going to take their word at face value again, or are we going to look in the rules and do what we can as leaders to protect the community?
Okay, John, and then, yes, we'll move around.
I'm just, I know you tossed it to the other candidates who aren't on council, but it seemed like Chris's questions were directed to council, and I taking the opportunity to respond. We also had another curveball thrown at us, and that was COVID. And everyone said, not everyone, of course, many people I trust, said, trust in the science, right? Science changes, it's not fixed, right? So we trusted in the information we had at that time. It's not fixed, it's going to court, right? So we will always act on the information we've got at hand. We're not going to act out of ideology or some belief system. We have to deal with the facts. As far as the economic benefit goes, I think I've been saying for a long time, let's imagine that no, not a single position is going to be held by someone who lives in North Grenville. And I've talked about, and you diminish the impact by saying a few sandwiches and a tank of gas. We are just about to host one of the biggest events we've seen in the IPM, and they're talking about 80,000 people to 100,000 people coming through the doors. I'm going to make a calculation, and I will adjust it according to a conversation I had with Don Sherritt. Where's Don? There he is, way back there. So 100,000 people. We're not going to have the IPM every quarter, every year. Maybe the last time we have the IPM. Previous to the IPM coming through at the end of December, our largest event that drew people into this community was Kemptville Live. And they talked about, 20,000 people coming for Kemptville Live. If every single position held at the correctional facility, and they're saying there's going to have 235 beds, and they're going to say it's 2-point-something staff per bed, per inmate. Let's just imagine just doubling that number, 235. You get 470 staff. And again, imagine not a single one of them lives in North Grenville. It's a 24/7 facility, but let's say that they go on skeletal shift, 50 weeks of the year. So we're talking about, well, let's say 36 days of the year, because I've got 330 staff days written down here. Times the number of days in the year, you've got 155,000 visits per year, just because of this facility. Okay, so if we're saying that Kemptville Live has incredible impact on economic impact, and there's a formula that the provincial tourism ministry uses to calculate based on the kind of event and the number of people attending. If we're saying that the international plowing match is going to have a huge impact at 155, at 100,000, here we've got an economic impact of 155,000 visits per year. People driving in to North Grenville, they don't live here. So yes, gas, sandwiches, services, whatever, going out to dinner. Now, Mitch, you're going to say, you know, they don't spend as much because they're told to go home and don't mix with the natives or whatever. I'll take that with a grain of salt. Now, to Don's conversation I had with Don out there, he's saying that they identified Kemptville as being a hotspot because more correctional service workers live in Kemptville right now that would be servicing this facility. So I'll cut that number in half. Instead of 155,000, let's say 75,000 people a year coming into this town with driving in with their wallets. I think we have to acknowledge that there will have positive economic impact. How much? Well, that's a really good question. How much impact is it going to have? Is it just minuscule or is it going to be significant? And I would love, maybe the next council might want to fund such a study. It's inexpensive to do that kind of economic study. The next council might want to do it, but it has to be specific to the North Grenville situation. You can't base your decision based on some statistics from Alberta or for upstate New York. Thank you.
Okay, I want to go back to Nadia's original question again, because Chelsea wants to address the whole issue of governance. And a lot of what we're talking about is not just a matter of whether you're for or against, it's a matter of how is the decision arrived at, how is the response reached, and what will that mean in future for other kind of projects. In other words, what is the role of a council in all of this, given the various limitations and expertise and so on that's going on. So the issue of governance, I think, is key, and I know you want to say something on that.
Yeah, I'll just add something quickly. I know we have other issues to discuss, so I don't want to take long, but Nadia, I just want to thank you for thoughtfully coming together with the question framed the way you did, because that is what matters for the next decades of generations that are going to live and inhabit this community. So I think I don't have a lot of governance experience. Everyone around the table would have more than I would have. But I can tell you that I'm capable of being curious and determined. I also have a communications degree, and I feel that if I was in the shoes of a councillor in a similar situation, one of the strategies I would want to employ is having a referendum on the municipal ballot. Because right now, anything that I've read or heard of that has happened have been fairly informal polls. And with my experience in statistics, which is fairly limited, again, probably people around this table have more experience with survey development to avoid bias, but it's tricky to do that. And a referendum question to the entire voter base would be a far more weighty proof to the province of the like or dislike of a certain project happening with no consultation. And so, I would have wanted to see more of a comprehensive consultation, even from our municipality to our residents, even after the fact. I think it would have been good to have a referendum on this project coming into our community on the ballot, even just for official kind of, just to get a baseline of whether people are for or against. We may not be able to do anything, but wouldn't it be nice if we actually knew where people stood, how many people stood where they stood? That would be nice, because you know what? If we had so many people against and we still can't do anything about it, well, then maybe we need an advisory committee to be a liaison between the MPP and council, who represents you folks, and we bring those concerns to this liaison, and every question and concern comes to them, and we create bridges with within the community, you know. So we see if there's processes set up to have prisoners have regular transportation when they are released. We want to make sure that's totally taken care of, so that they can go wherever they need to go. And what partnerships do we need? What funding do we need to make that happen? That's just one example of a concern. But if we can't do anything about it, I think it would have been really nice to know via a referendum. And I also feel that a referendum, because of the weight it would help to win the publicity war, because news wins wars. And if you have 80% of citizens from 17,000, I feel like the province kind of has to listen. They have to at least come up with a much better reply than what I have read that they have shared for justification or whatever. So that's my...
Anybody around the table want any more comments on this? Yeah.
Okay, I'd just like to start by saying that I'm totally impressed with the existing councillors and how they handled this situation. It's, I think everyone can appreciate the amount of work and effort that the councillors have on their table just running and organizing a community of this size without having the announcement by the provincial government added to their workload. So I thank them for that. And with that, I also acknowledge that the upcoming council will have a lot of work to do on top of what their normal duties are, just in order to negotiate and get the best, if the prison project goes ahead, for the community at large. And I'm going to keep my remarks on governance and not the prison at the moment. So the provincial government knows that a correctional facility is not a desirable project, and it's going to result in objections from the community where it's located. They're going to leave it to the last minute till it's almost a done deal before they make the announcement. If you compare this type of project to, say, the Olympic Games, where the amount of money and man hours that goes into winning a competitive bid of that nature is a different project entirely. And that's the way that the provincial government has had to deal with this. It's not to say that, okay, I'll stop there, in there, and not get into it. Thank you very much.
Okay, given the time, Michael, you have a question?
I do have a question. I assume this mic is on?
It is.
In response to Chelsea's notion of a referendum, we did have a referendum. It was called the provincial election, and our MPP won a majority in each poll in North Grenville. So what that says to me is most people don't care, which is really, really sad, or they just vote the way they do without any thought. So I guess that's not caring. As a creature of the province, the municipality's hands are tied, and I look forward to this judicial review to clarify a number of things. Also, I'd like to say, I wish the hell people would stop saying prison. Prison is a federal responsibility. A jail is provincial. And if people insist on calling it a prison, I totally have no faith in their judgment. They are attempting to mislead the public by the nature of the language they use. And that is my biased opinion from which I'm not going to be moved.
Michael he holds back so much on his ideas. I should mention, and this is just a balance on that, one reason why the word prison is being used a lot is because one of the officials from the Solicitor General's office in a public meeting in North Grenville used the term. which sort of gave it free rein anyway. Okay. There's other issues that relate to this idea of the prison, correctional facility, jail, the place with locks on one side of the door. And it's been brought up by almost everybody, and there's some questions here that deal with this, and it's the issue of economic development generally. That has been one of the arguments that have been used for and against the prison. But it's a wider context, as John was saying. So some of these questions, if I can kind of put them together, there's been a huge increase, not only in our population, but a huge increase in the number of people using food banks and House of Lazarus and Salvation Army and the Knights of Columbus and so on. And that seems to have largely gone almost underground. At the same time, there's a great deal of increase, hang on, I have to get this right, the need for a more sustainable type of development in North Grenville. That means both building and in commerce and in everything else. So what I'd like to turn this around for the candidates here is to say, what is the approach you would take to economic development? Where's the priorities? How do you balance the things that we're looking at in terms of the poverty issue, the homelessness issue, and so on, and balance that with the need to bring in more economic development, more housing, and so on. And the last point I'll make, because again, I'm just using this, the last point I'll make is that local builders have complained that they cannot build affordable housing in North Grenville because they cannot afford the land. And by the time they pay all the expenses that they need in order to put up a house, it's no longer affordable. So as a council and as potential councillors, what would your approach be to economic development in this broader context? Maybe we could start with John and move around the table. You like talking, John.
No. So it's a rather broad question. Like, how do we deliver to equity-deserving groups, marginalized people, the social services, the food, the basic sustenance of life, or whatever you want to call it, and somehow that's in opposition to economic development? I don't see there's any opposition, but how would we use economic development to address some of these lacks that we have?
I think the problem is that a lot of people can't afford to live here. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't even afford to rent one if they can find one. And if more and more people, I mean, House of Lazarus and Salvation Army have said that the increase in the client list that they've experienced over the last year or so is just unbelievable. So something is going on here, and whatever the economic development is, that is taking place isn't trickling down. You quoted Reagan, I might as well.
Oh, okay. Well, we're not unique in dealing with that situation. And as Mitch pointed out in answer to another question, we're at the very bottom. And this is not an excuse. I think we've done a lot as a council to try and mitigate some of the financial distress that businesses had during the COVID pandemic, and they're ongoing. And we're continuing to support the recovery of local business. Local small businesses create 80% of the new jobs. It's the mom and pop shop that can hire a high school student after school. It's to bring on new staff, whatever. It's the small businesses that create the jobs. With jobs, and hopefully high-paying jobs, not just Mick jobs, apologies to McDonald's, you know, with high-paying jobs, people can better afford the essentials of life. One of the very first things that Mayor Peckford did was strike the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing. Mitch sat on it. Colleen Linus, who co-chaired it, along with Carl Cannon. They came up with recommendations. This council had staff look at a strategy how to implement those recommendations. I've been in conversations with developers, and they're not some sort of evil cabal, you know, wanting to rape and pillage North Grenville. They also many of them live in the community, and they're able to sell houses because it is a wonderful community with all kinds of amenities. So, just to wrap it up, thank you, David. You know, I think we continue to support small businesses that create jobs. We try and create a quality of life here that's very attractive for people to move their businesses here, and do what we can with what tools we have to try and supply the basic needs of the population, including people who, you know, should be able to afford to live here, who service every day. Thanks.
Right. So this is actually the question of affordable housing is one of my pet subjects. And there's many, many ways to tackle this. Some of them are at the municipal level, some of them are at the provincial level. So right now, the federal and provincial government are pushing for more affordable housing. And if that means that the land prices are too high, then we can petition for funding to offset the cost of land purchase so that there's land that's available at a lower cost. The other way to do this is threefold. One, you can reduce the size of the house, and a lot of communities now are in the 900 to 1,000 square foot range. Second way is to go to townhouses, which are much more energy efficient and cost effective to build. And the third way is density. If you can't build across, you build up. So other areas, other communities have raised the ceiling on what the height of construction is allowed, and there's no buildings in Kemptville right now or the surrounding area that are high-rise construction. And that's a missing, and that's an opportunity for the community to go that route. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the question and the comment and the opportunity to speak about affordable housing and the cost of living in North Grenville. As Councillor Barclay said, we have supported the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing, and we've done a lot. The community living, we have completed a project in partnership with Community Living or with municipal support. 11 new homes on Jack Street. And we faced opposition with that because that's something new and different and people didn't really want it. And some people don't want the higher density, but it is a fact that affordable housing has to mean higher density. And we need, and there's also a market for small homes. Most of us are, especially since COVID and the whole, how many people cleaned out their basements and realized they had way too much stuff and they didn't need that much stuff, and we don't need that much space. And we're happier in smaller spaces where we don't have a bunch of clutter. So I think you're quite right, smaller homes, a little bit higher density. The Habitat for Humanity project on Concession Road, we've donated that piece of land to the Habitat for Humanity. The old courthouse, now I'm thrilled that it's going to be used, renovated and used to build 9 homes for affordable housing. 25% of new builds will be designated all affordable, and the secondary dwellings, a secondary dwelling on your house or on your lot or attached to your house, has been encouraged with waived development charges. So now, sadly, the COVID pandemic has really affected not only the price of land in North Grenville, because we all know house prices went crazy, but building costs. Now, cost of materials has gone down. You don't pay $48 for a 2x4 anymore, but there's still increased costs in building, and that's a challenge for developers to still meet that 25% affordable housing. And so we do need to look at making some changes and meeting the demands and having a supply and meeting the new and changing demands of people. I don't think we need all those big houses, and I don't think people really want them anymore. And people are more looking to right size. So between that, and I still believe that the Eastern Ontario Correctional Facility will bring jobs to North Grenville, and that there will be economic benefit coming out of that. So I think we do need to continue to look for opportunities to provide more affordable housing in North Grenville.
So I don't have a lot of experience with economic development. but I do have a passion for access and for inclusion. And the best experiences I've ever had were where the places I was, so on campus and in certain jobs, not all, where there were so many different people around me that had so many different lived experiences and so many different perspectives that collaboration became exciting. And so something that that I want to say is that in regards to economic development, I believe there are really strong community voices already here. That's not me. But in terms of how affordability in North Grenville, how important it is, it's essential. And I think one thing, and I met with the mayor prior to deciding to come and run for a seat at the table, was that I had a project in mind that I wondered if maybe it had even been discussed. But seeking out a tiny home subdivision for this region, this municipality, I think would be such a beautiful complement to the type of community that we have, the type of people in our community. And I mean, we say growing green, right? And what else to reduce your carbon footprint than having a tiny home? And all your neighbors have tiny homes. And you sit in each other's teeny tiny front yards and you have a beverage and you, right? So I just think that it would suit the lifestyle and the attitudes that are in this community. And we have such beautiful spaces that would be a really great setting for such a subdivision. And it's already being done in Canada, and I think we can collaborate and ask questions and learn about how something like that could maybe come together for our municipality.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I didn't sit on affordable housing. It was early days. Thank you to the members at the table that did. Part of my role in the past few months as a councillor, I sit on planning and development. So for affordable housing, we have quite a number of plans in the pipeline. There's a lot of intensification happening. Nobody's really hit the button to get them started. There's a lot coming down the pipeline, so that I can't really divulge, but we are really working hard to make sure that whoever these developers are, and I know them, they're working towards attaining that 25% affordable housing. They're working hard. They're taking cuts with what they're going to charge for rent, and somewhere down the line, we are going to be helping also. You'll notice that in one of our past council meetings, we had discussed it. A lot of the land has already been acquired for these they're not high rises, but they're affordable housing units that are between 4 to 6 floors and intensification. The problem being is we haven't got our wastewater treatment upgraded to facilitate all this. So this is what a little bit of the holdback is. So if that helps to share what we're up against, there are things in the pipeline and it is happening. So I look forward to working more on it, because even though I'm slow to talk about it, I do have a passion for it, because I think it's important in our community to have that. Thank you.
I feel like I'm at a council meeting when you don't get your questions in fast enough. Everybody's already mentioned all my points. So I guess, not to repeat everything that everyone said, but during my opening remarks, I mentioned the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing deliberately, because I really think it was one of the biggest changes that this council has brought about to address housing affordability and affordable housing and what that looks like here. And how do you get there from here, right? It's not as simple as saying, Let's build tiny homes. Good, done, sealed, we got them. No, you have to set the community up for that. You have to be prepared for that. You have to have the right place for it. You have to have the infrastructure. You have to have the right rules in place that talk about minimum footprint, right? We've made some of these changes to our planning that enables. And so the role of council is to enable and facilitate. We are not the builders, but we have to set the right conditions for builders to do these kinds of things and to do, in quotes, the right thing. And when we talk about 25% for affordable housing, that's another piece to it. And so, you know, there's a whole series of options that we have available. The affordable housing options that are out there right now, whether it's Jack Street or looking at better use of space with townhomes like we have on Van Buren. You know, there's all these developments that have already happened or are coming. The courthouse was the mayor fighting to get the funding into our community so that the courthouse could be renovated to have the right kind of housing. And it's not affordable housing, and then folks will say, well, I don't make enough to even get into affordable housing. It's rent geared to income. You know, these are meaningful changes, and I think that there's all of these different options that went out, and I think it's fantastic. And you know, my energy may be taking over me on this one, but I think that local builders are wanting to do more and to try and resolve the issue. The prices that we saw during COVID were astounding. I think the market is righting itself. Again, that's, you know, not something that we play in, it's the market itself, but, you know, there's changes coming on that one. As far as what we do locally to encourage the economic development. We saw it during COVID. It forced us all to look locally, and it forced us all to realize we have so much here. We can do so much within our own community that we don't need to go into Barrhaven or into Ottawa or go elsewhere for most of what we need. And I think encouraging the local businesses that we have and supporting them by having, you know, different ways of promoting them, like the Love NG and all these other different tools we have. Matt Gilmer has done, you know, an incredible amount of work to help promote. And all of those things, I think they all are different cogs in the wheel. And so I think if we can bring all that together and continue to move things forward, we will start to see these changes. But it doesn't happen overnight. And again, it's about enabling and facilitating. And for anybody here who hasn't been on council yet, that's your job, right? Everything else falls into those categories. So that's my take on ECDEV. Thank you.
If Kristen was complaining about everybody speaking her points already, how do you think I feel? So I also was on the mayor's task force, and that's in fact the first project that got me caring about this community and continue to spread my knowledge and my experience. The project we talked about, humanity, the Habitat for Humanity and Jack Streets, you have to remember there was also some not in my backyard issues. Neighbors were saying, what are you going to do, you can't put those houses there. And I remember coming to some of the council meetings and having to listen to councillors explaining what was going on and addressing the neighbors who were saying, not in my backyard, it's going to create more vandalism, it's going to, all kinds of crazy reasons. And one of the things that I remember doing on the Affordable Housing Task Force was to try to compare the rent, with the rent prices in Kemptville and how much you had to make to be able to pay that rent. And with a minimum wage of $15, $16, there's no way anybody can work enough hours in a day or in a week to be able to afford rent. So you have to have 2 or 3 jobs or have 2 or 3 people in the home. So those are the issues that are very concerned. I don't want to repeat what my colleague friends have said because it is an important topic. The federal government's trying to do something with this new home savings plan that they're going to create. You still have to have a job and be able to put money aside for that. You can't ask developers to reduce their prices. They're in the business to make a living. So it is a challenge. There's the high school that was going to be on Main Street that was going to be converted into apartments. The owner decided that I didn't want to do that. It wasn't going to be worthwhile. So that project fell aside for now. Hopefully it'll come back. So anyway, I share the frustrations and the concerns that the citizens have. Thank you.
I could talk all night about affordable housing. As the economist on the Affordable Housing Task Force, I dug into every number, every statistic, everything I could to help our municipalities. So anybody who's thinking of volunteering, it can make a difference. Council took that report and immediately started moving on many of the recommendations that Andre, myself, and others made. So you can make a difference, and we've done a lot, and that's wonderful. By the way, tiny homes, Chelsea, I'm all over that. We did talk about that in our meetings. Unfortunately, our own official plan and zoning and bylaws prohibit much of that right now, which is common in much of Ontario, but it was an issue we raised 4 years ago when we started the work on affordable housing. There's much more that could be done. There's much more we should be doing as a municipality on that. David, I'm going to leave that and just come back to your question. It was much more rich, I thought. And you talked about food banks, and I thought about the point about rentals and how expensive it is to rent in our community. Who can pay like $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment, in downtown Kemptville? It's horrendous. And it reminded me of a story when I worked in the far north. I worked with Indigenous communities all over the north on their economies. And the elders always said to me, Mitch, without an economy, we have no community. The kids will leave, they will do this and they will do that. And we just won't be here anymore. And that's part of our challenge here, is that we need to find our root in this community that I'm hoping makes us more than a suburb of Ottawa, which is largely what we are when we keep adding more and more housing. It is a challenge to add real economic development, which I did for a living. And let me tell you guys, it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of strategy, things that we should have already been done and we need to do as we go forward. Those are the things that will create meaningful jobs, living wages that will let people pay whatever the rents are, buy the food that they can, and allow them to support their own basic needs. Ultimately, that's the foundation for success.
So almost everything on affordable housing has been touched on already, so I just wanted to express my support also for tiny homes. I think it's a fantastic idea. I'd like to see those bylaws amended. Also, too, housing cooperatives were more popular in the past, and I'd like to see maybe some exploration in cooperative housing models. Switching over to economic development and your question about food insecurity and food bank usage, I think it presents a great opportunity for North Grenville, which is a farming community. It's a food production community. I feel like we could invest heavily in developing that sector of our economy, working to produce more food here locally. I actually proposed, similar to the Affordable Housing Task Force, which I think was fantastic work by everybody involved, a food security task force in order to ensure the residents here can afford healthy food. I know we won the most active community in Canada a year ago and in Ontario this year, and if we want to stay the most active community, I feel like we need to have access to healthy food. Also, to growing the economy, I'd like to see us focus on clean energy and more green type businesses. I just read an article today that said home heating costs is about to go up 30% this winter. That's a scary number to a lot of people. I don't know about you guys. I heat with propane. 30% is a big hit on my budget. Grocery costs are already crazy. I'm single now, so it's not just people that can't afford rent. It's people with high-paying jobs that are now looking at their budgets and making cuts. So that's what I'd like to see the economy focus on is an economy that works for the people of North Grenville and an economy that's designed to benefit everybody, including the lowest level employees. Thank you.
Thank you all for that. Okay, we're at a really awkward point now because we're basically out of time, but there's still questions to come in and there's still closing statements. I don't know how people feel about taking more questions or whether we should go to closing. I know there's people on both sides here. You've been waiting a long time, so I think you should be at least allowed to ask a question. I'm not sure if we'll get around to any more, though.
My name is Greg Alexander. I think I have a pretty simple question. I moved to Kemptville in 2019, and I was kind of flabbergasted by the lack of yard waste pickup, and I don't understand it. We can put out our compost in terms of kitchen compost every week, but I can't put out yard waste. And so I'm just wondering if maybe the existing council can speak to when, was there a plan to have it so that we could put it in with kitchen waste, or that we could have picked up every week? I don't understand. So maybe you can start by explaining why we can't have it every week.
Okay, councillors, it's time to talk trash.
Compost.
Yeah, give John a break.
All right, I'll go and then you can top it up there, John. So it comes down to the contract that we have established. So the contract that we currently have does not include that in the current composting pickup. So that's a short answer. Can it be changed? I guess contracts can always be changed, and it's certainly something that we've heard previously about the need for that. There is yard waste pickup that happens twice a year, and yes, I know that's not the answer you're looking for. Trust me, I have plenty of my own, but I live on a property where I do composting of my own stuff. So anyway, or my husband does, sorry, Steve. So I think that, it comes down to that. It's a contract that we have with Mterra. And they have set guidelines, and it was through the negotiation process that limited that part of it. And so, perhaps it was part of an oversight. I don't really think it was deliberate in that sense. It made sense from an economic perspective as well, because all the contracts cost money, and there's amounts that have to go into that. So that's the simplified version of it. And I hear you. All of the things that we're doing for the green bin program, which has been overwhelmingly successful, we got far further in the first year for the goals that we were looking to reach. So I think that we've shown that we want to have something, and we need to have something for all of our compostable material, and yard waste is certainly part of that. I think that there are more innovative solutions that we can look at as well that other communities do by having community compost areas that would accept things like yard waste that need to be managed and so on, but that turns into compost that then can be redelivered back out to, pardon me, out to residents in the community. So those are other options that I think we've had conversations about, but really haven't taken hold.
So my quick add to that is, what's your
Timeline for yard waste pickup? I don't know. Vote me back in and I'll give you a better answer.
I don't know if you want to go. I mean, you can't follow that.
Oh, I'll
you're
try.
gonna try.
I'll try.
We're running out of time.
Thank you for the question. We did have yard waste pickup as a trial program, and I would be remiss not to thank Councillor Strachan for great assistance. She did a lot of heavy lifting as we adopted our green bin program, and certainly staff was behind it 100% too. So we have a new contract. When we talk about, okay, let me back up. We're an interesting community. We're a rural municipality with urban issues, right? A lot of the people moving into Kemptville are in these new subdivisions where they've got teeny tiny lots, et cetera, they have trees, thank goodness. They have yard waste. Like 60 to 65% of the community live in the country. I'm very grateful. I have a brush pile. It's where the rabbits breed, and it's fuel for my bonfires, et cetera. But to your point, I think it's about managing expectations. We're a small municipality of 17,000. We don't have the buying power, and we can't attract the markets that a city like Ottawa can. So it's market driven. There's certain people say, why can't I put this in the recycle bin when this community down the road can? Well, we can't collect what we can't find a market for. It's as simple as that. So I can't top Kristen's answer, but it's something that's always on the plate. We did have there wasn't enough uptake for the yard waste pickup in the spring and the fall. So it wasn't really economically viable. You would have to pay a lot per bag for us to be able to offer you on a more regular basis. So Innovative solutions, we're always looking at best practices. When it will happen, I guess there's a sweet spot where we have that population in 5 years, that an urban population, because it's growing faster, where we might be able to afford it or find a market for it. So basically, we just don't have enough of it to get the proper price to pick it up every week.
Okay, I think we have to just go to closing statements. I'm sorry. We are running out of time. We could always just pay rent for another hour and we'll all stay around. And it goes into taxes, doesn't it? Anyway, yes, I think we have to do this. We have to just go to closing statements now. I'm sorry. It always ends up this way. And given that, I would ask candidates to keep to about 1 minute. That means 30 seconds for you, and because you will go on to 1 minute anyway. Brando here is taking over from Pat. 1 minute. So just wave the red card. If that's all right with everybody, well, we don't have a choice. So we go backwards. And this time, Andre does go first.
Darn, I can't use the excuse that everybody has used my notes. All right, so first experience for me to attend an all-candidates meeting, and I found it very interesting. I thought you've had some great questions, and it's obviously a community that cares about where we're heading, and it's going to be an interesting 4 years for whoever gets elected in. You've heard that the job of being a councillor is quite challenging. There's lots of items and lots of technical stuff to learn, but I think the hardest decision, or the hardest job, is for you to have to sit back now and look at the 9 candidates and pick the 4 you think will do the best for your community. So for that, I wish you luck. I want you to remember Andre Rancourt, and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. My priorities for the future of next 4 years would be primary health care for the residents, ensuring that we protect the environment that we have here, including our aquifers, ensuring that the surplus lands from the farm side with the correctional facility are transferred to North Grenville and developed, and ensuring that the Solicitor General pays all of the associated costs with the correctional facility. I also want to see the equity, diversity, and inclusion policy help us towards building a very truly inclusive community and a strong community. And to continue to promote initiatives that contribute to North Grenville being safe and healthy. I've been honored to represent you, and I will ask again for your support, and if you would consider electing me for the next 4 years. But for sure, make sure you get out and vote between October 17th and the 24th. Thank you.
And thank you all for showing up here tonight. John and I weren't sure how many people were going to show up, and I'm very impressed, and I hope there's many more watching at home or will watch this video later. Regardless of the topic and the topics and the issues that come up over the next 4 years, should I get in, I promise to continue in the way that I have previously in the last 4 years, with honest communication, transparency, and to exhibit the type of leadership that you would expect to see in this community, and to adequately and appropriately represent all of you. Issues such as the environment and active transportation are low-hanging fruit for me. They're the ones that I naturally gravitate towards. Areas such as equity, diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation are territories that I have not spent enough time in, and I'm continuing to learn. And those are areas that I think need to be focused on significantly over the next 4 years. If in doubt, look for the longest name on the ballot, Kristen Elkostrakian. Thank you.
Chris, you're next.
Thanks everybody for coming out tonight. It's super important that we have active participants in the future of the community, taking time like this to become informed. I've always made sure to vote in every election since becoming eligible. I used to think that making my voice heard at the ballot box was enough for me to sleep well at night, knowing that I participated. what we've seen in the recent provincial election is a voter turnout of about 42%, I believe. The way things are going now, I feel like voting's not enough. I feel like people like us, people who are engaged in the community, who are knowledgeable about the political process, need to work hard with our friends and family and our neighbors to encourage more people to become involved, to volunteer with campaigns that resonate with them, and to donate their skills or finances to candidates who represent the future they'd like to see. Maybe even consider putting themselves forward as candidates and inspire people to support their vision of the future. People are becoming frustrated that no matter who they vote for, nothing seems to change. Oh, never mind. Good luck to the other candidates. Have a great night.
Deb.
Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening and listening. You can all tell I'm as nervous as hell to do this. I'm not a good public speaker. Anyways, I have to say North Grenville is one of the fastest growing communities in Eastern Ontario. Through strong leadership, we can protect and sustain a high quality of life for current and future residents so that we always have a thriving, vibrant, and caring community, striving to keep a safe, healthy, and caring place to live, work, and play. I'm committed to continue to represent you, the taxpayers of North Grenville, for the next term of council, and I really would like to be elected to serve for the next 4 years. My name is at the bottom of the ballot, Deb Wilson, but I hope I'm top in your mind at the vote.
Mitch.
Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciated the time and the chance to engage you. I kind of outlined who I was at the start, and I think you've had a chance to listen to some of my answers about who I really am and my efforts in this community and trying to make a difference. So, I appreciate, like I said, the opportunity to do that. Be assured, if you guys choose me, I'm bringing that expertise. I'll be all over the economy, all over the rural part. Remember, I'm the guy with the farm. Efficient and effective local government, 30 years of career doing that kind of work. And most importantly, taking care of vulnerable communities, seniors, kids, families. This is what I do for a living. I absolutely have great passion for it. So guys, the one last message I have for you is almost everybody here either spends inordinate amounts of time as councillors or volunteers on something. My biggest concern is how the heck am I going to manage something like that with all the other commitments we have? Volunteer, you can make a difference in the community as well. Thanks so much.
All right. So during my term on the upcoming council, I'd like to work on urban planning and community growth. I have a desire to preserve the past, maintain the present, and also to help shape the future. As an engineer, I'm trained as a problem solver. I believe in listen, learn, lead, where the order is important. I've heard your desires to maintain the rural feel of our community, to have green spaces, trees, and affordable housing. You want responsible government with value for the tax dollar. You want services at a reasonable cost and appropriate to the neighborhood where you live. There's always room for improvement. After the election, I hope I, Robert Bowden, have the chance to bring your issues to the council table. Thank you.
John, I think you're on.
Thank you, David. It's no matter what the outcome of this election, it's been a privilege to work with 4 strong, very intelligent women, and they give proof to the adage that if you want to get something done, put a woman in charge. With them, we've accomplished a lot during our term, including keeping residential property tax under 2% each and every year. I thought that would be an applause line, but there you go. In my booklet, you can read a lot of detail on what I think are some of our key highlights. I hope you grab one on your way out. Accomplishments is significant investment in agriculture and the environment, heritage, arts and culture, support for small businesses. Was that me going ding? I'll wrap it up. Also, we've been great advocates for this community. With Mayor Peckford and my council colleagues, we'll continue to fight for better internet, local doctors, community benefits from the correctional facility, a vibrant downtown, community cohesion, and the preservation of a small town feel. I hope to earn your support in the upcoming elections. Vote for me. Thanks.
Okay, I know everyone is ready to go home, so I'm going to be quick. Vote Chelsea McIntyre when you see the ballot. You'll be voting for vision, passion, determination, and creativity. My friends call me Chelsea MacGyver McIntyre. I find a way, and my kids can tell you that too. And if I can't, boy, did I try. So I really hope I can end on an impact note. I think, Mitch, you shared, please volunteer. Whether you're volunteering with one of us for our upcoming campaigns or you are volunteering digitally, you're sharing these posts that we are working hard to plan and communicate. You all want transparency, but we need your help. We're just one person. So anything that you can do to spread the word about our policies, platforms that you agree with or don't agree with, everything helps. You are helping. I'm on TikTok, LinkedIn, and I have a Facebook page. My website is chelseaforng.ca. So please vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all for putting your names forward on this. The North Grenville Times has been covering this community for almost 10 years. And we've done a lot of these meetings. And I must say, on a personal note, I've never been more hopeful and positive at any stage in our shared story. And I think this particular group, no matter which of them get elected, are probably the strongest bunch of candidates I've ever come across. I think we've got a lot of good things to look forward to, and I think it's all in our hands, we the people. We the people, that's where the power is. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for getting involved. And I'm sorry we couldn't cover all the questions. That tells you something about the community too. So, Gormagov, merci beaucoup. Chimagwich. Thank you all very much. Peace.